First off, I want to have Rick Bruce come on up, and so he can give you the introduction from IBEW.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rick Bruce again, and we are in my house right now. They say wherever you spend the most amount of your time, that's where you live, and this is where I live, so I spend most of my days here. IBEW Local 58 has been in the city of Detroit for over 130 years now, and we came to this location, and you'll see a lot of locals, a lot of unions in this area, in this Corktown area, and we were the backstop to protect working men and women from the encroachments of big corporate influences. So we were always here, brought here to make sure we protected working people. And again, the opportunity again to support community organizations such as the Returning Citizens Taskforce. And Janeé Ayers does such a wonderful job. And anytime she asks me, I jump at the opportunity to help out. In fact, I was at another meeting, and they said, well, can you come down and be at this meeting? I said, absolutely. Let me stop what I'm doing and come down here so I can say hello and welcome everybody to our gathering space. We had converted our building maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It was just 4 walls and a ceiling. We converted into a zero-net energy center. So we're the first of our kind in the state and one of just a few in the country of this size that basically we generated 180,000 megawatts last year. So basically what that means for all of you guys and gals, that means that we basically are creating or producing more electricity than we actually are using. So this, thank you. Yeah, it is. We want to be good stewards. We understand that we only have one city, one environment, and we want to make sure we protect it. And that's what we're doing to help. But also, even more important, how do we give back to the residents? How do we do and become a better steward for our community? And so, welcome to IBEW Local 58, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 58, and anything that we can do to help support Returning Citizens Task Force, we're here to help. Thank you.
Rick is so modest and humble. Rick is probably the dopest person I've ever met. Like, just the most genuine heart, the whole nine. And so I'm very thankful for not just him and his presence in the city, but as being my friend. So just had to get that out the way. All right, so we're going to change a couple of things up. So when Jayla comes over to you, you'll introduce yourselves. Don't try to hold the mic, just like
I'm Julia Rhodes. I'm the project manager for the City of Detroit's Expungement Program, Project Clean Slate. Carrie Jones, Project Clean Slate. Chelsea Neblett, Financial Empowerment Center.
Sam Marvin, Mayor's Office of Workforce Development.
Kim Rustin with Public Sector Consultants.
Greg Anderson, Goodwill Flippers Group.
AJ Evans, Human Core Health System.
Shannon Gordon, Security Credit Union.
Eladio Nino, Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation.
Monica Alvarado, Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation.
Carlton Akins, Team Wellness Center.
Kathy Murphy, Criminal Defense Attorney. I'm here from the National Lawyers Guild, Detroit, Michigan chapter.
Kenneth Rucka, Adair Precision CNC Machine, Detroit, Michigan.
Angie Jackson, Detroit Free Press, that covered Returning Citizens.
Ryan back down here with the AARP Foundation.
Willie Bell with Family Assistance for Renaissance Man, War Farm.
Dale Melford with the United Methodist Church Board of Justice.
Good afternoon. I am Cynthia A. Johnson, State Representative for House District 5. I also I'm working on Ban the Box bill, and I was a parole and probation agent, so I know the system and what's happening and what's not happening with regard to our returning citizens.
Dr. Napier G. Thomas, Director of Constituent Services with State Rep. Cynthia A. Johnson.
Afternoon, Sonia Beard, MBLC. Kawana Keys, Michigan Department of Corrections, Workforce Development Specialist.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Malia Salam with Serco, and I'm the Contract Performance Analyst and Reentry Program Manager for 3 out of 8 Detroit Edward Career Centers.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan Sprout, Community Engagement Coordinator for the Community Leadership Program at the Henry Ford College.
Good afternoon, Marcus Williams, Lead Reentry Career Advisor for Detroit at Work Career Centers.
Daryl Woods, I'm a friend of Janeé.
Good afternoon, Jerome Marks, Case Manager, Federal Reentry Center.
Good afternoon, Daryl Patterson, EPS for Federal Reentry Center.
Stacey Alavashi, City of Detroit Human Resources.
Yeah, you got me all right. I can go get with Terry in the back.
Right.
I'm uncomfortable with this. Senator Marshall Bullock, the 4th District, portion of Detroit, Lincoln Park, Allen Park, and Southgate. I was back here talking to Rick Bruce, just talking about when the Council Member-at-Large just told me I was the coolest, dopest person. But I didn't learn how to tie my ties from Rick.
I mean, when you can start doing that time, then, you take it. I mean, whatever it is, I can't do it. So, all right, well, now we're all acquainted. Representative Johnson pointed out something to me that I think I take it for granted. So we have these task force meetings with all of us because we touch all of the different communities first. And so I think that it is important that all of us are proficient in what's happening, whether it's legislative policies from the city, state, or the feds. So we know what's happening, then when we go back out into our respective places, we can disseminate the right information. So the next step is when we have our next fair or what have you, and then we'll have our actual returning citizens there so we can better serve them. But I did want to make sure that I made that very clear on why this happens in this manner. Right, so we'll go right into our update from Ms. Carrie Jones and Julie Rhodes from Project Queensland.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Rhodes. I'm the, again, project manager for City of Detroit's expungement program. Okay, this might be a little better. There we go. So Project Clean Slate is a partnership between the City of Detroit Law Department and Detroit Work, and I'd also like to thank Council Member Ayers for her leadership and support of this project, as it's really sort of expanded and will continue to expand over the next few years. So we essentially help to get city residents' criminal records expunged underneath the current law. This allows constituents to get better access to more job opportunities, housing, certain licensing, and also educational opportunities. This is a completely free service for all Detroit residents, so some attorneys may charge $1,000 to $3,000 for this, but this is, again, entirely free for our residents. We now have 2 full-time attorneys that have weekly office hours at 2 Detroit at Work career centers, and then residents can also register for online screening on their website. So as you can see, the large majority of individuals who are seeking expungement are doing so to gain access to new or better employment opportunities. There's a lot of jobs where that have a lot of restrictions surrounding your criminal record, and then also additional licensing restrictions as well for some industries like cosmetology. So the much broader impact of expungement in Michigan, we kind of looked to a recent study that was done through the U of M Law School. About 6.5% of eligible individuals actually successfully complete this, and about 90% of individuals who may be eligible for expungement don't even know that they're eligible. So we really need to do a much better job of getting the word out that this service exists. Expungement recipients have a significantly lower chance of recidivism. I think Michigan is a little bit lower than the national average at about 4%. And then overall, once somebody receives an expungement, they see within about a year that their wages go up about 25%. So right now, we're seeing about, or we know that there's about 82,000 eligible Detroiters in the city. Project Clean Slate has seen about a little over 2,600 individuals, and then since the program started back in 2016, we've seen about 4,000 Detroiters. But since 2017, we've seen 410 expungements through our program. So again, this program is open to City of Detroit residents only. We'd love to be able to partner with other counties and other cities and sharing our knowledge, but right now we only have the capacities to serve Detroiters. You can only have up to 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors. As we all know, this is a fairly restrictive law, and most people we see are not eligible. About only 25% of people we see are eligible under the current law. You can have no traffic offenses, so this is like operating while intoxicated, driving with license suspended, and it has to be 5 years since you were either discharged from probation or parole or released for incarceration. So this is whatever occurred last. So a lot of people think that they might be eligible, and the probation was never closed, and so we have to kind of start the clock then. So this is really what gets a lot of people. So overall, the expungement process is fairly lengthy. We've done a lot within our power to remove barriers to constituents who do want to take advantage of the service. So in a perfect world, they really should only be meeting with us twice. This first meeting, they meet with an attorney. We determine their eligibility, and if they come into a Detroit at Work Career Center, we have their application signed on the spot, and then we send them to the 3rd precinct to get fingerprinted. If they come and do one of our larger expungement events, we have everything there, including the fingerprinting, and we partner with DPD to do that. Once an individual has been determined that they're eligible, we have to then order their court records, verify that they are eligible by sending in fingerprints to Michigan State Police, who does a little bit more digging on an individual's criminal history. If Michigan State Police does give them the approval to have their record expunged, they let the Attorney General's office know, and then the Attorney General's office will grant the expungement application. And then the next step is that the individual attends the hearing, that they are represented by a City of Detroit attorney through Project Clean Slate, so they're not going in alone. And then the judge has to enter in the order that the granting the expungement. So on average, this takes an individual about 3 to 6 months to get from their initial meeting with the attorney to their record actually expunged. Most of this is due to long wait periods. We have to wait from the courts to get the certified court records back. We have to wait for responses from Michigan State Police and the Attorney General's office. So that's generally why this process takes so long. And then if somebody isn't sure that they're eligible, please just have them come in and meet with one of our attorneys, or suggest that they submit a form on our online screening. We're anticipating, fingers crossed, the law will be changing in the near future, and we'd like to be able to pull their records and know if they're eligible under the new law, and kind of get them started on the process before it goes into effect. So these are our 2 locations. We are at the Northwest Activity Center on Mondays and Wednesdays from 9 a.m. To noon, and we take a little bit of lunch break sometimes, and then 1 to 4. And then at the Samaritan Center, we're there at 9 to 4 as well, but then Thursdays we have shorter hours from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So as a number of you all know, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, there are some new legislative proposals that are out there that will hopefully almost over double the number of Detroiters who will be eligible for expungement. So this package overall is going to potentially increase the number of felonies and misdemeanors you can have on your record to be eligible for expungement. This will allow acts or convictions that were all underneath the one 24-hour period, or quote-unquote one bad night, to be eligible for expungement. So say you have multiple offenses from one night, from one arrest, that would just be counted as maybe one felony. It would also shorten the eligibility period for, depending on the type of offense, so most likely non-violent offenses. And then, as said before, this is going to more than double the number of Detroiters who will be eligible for expungement. So kind of how we need your assistance is we need to do a much better job of getting this program out to the community. This is, again, an entirely free service, and individuals who might be eligible underneath the current law should absolutely come in and meet with one of our attorneys. And then beyond being eligible right now, if they might be eligible in the future, then we will follow up with them if the law changes. You can also schedule us to come in and speak with your group, let them know about. We can also come out and do kind of mini expungement fairs, so if you have a number of individuals at a meeting, you can come and be on site to get people registered and determine their eligibility right then and there. We can also just come and speak to a broader population and community group about what Project Clean Slate is and what we're doing in the community. I'll probably be reaching out to a number of you to get those set up, like Goodwill, pull out Goodwill, and Sir Metro. So there's a few of you that I will be reaching out to anyway. This is my contact information. The best way to reach me is by email. I'm pretty on top of my email, and above is my desk line, but email is the best way to contact me. And you can also give clients my contact information as well.
All right. So guys, we're going to take a little bit of a detour on the schedule, but I do want to come back and talk about Project Clean Slate. But we have our Lieutenant Governor here with us to give us an update on the Michigan Joint Jail and Pretrial Task Force. So if you would be so kind as to welcome our Lieutenant Governor, Darlene Gilchrist.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. How y'all doing this evening? Good, good. Well, it's this afternoon still, but it's good to see y'all. It's good to be here. I want to thank you, Councilwoman, for your leadership with this task force. And I also want to thank you for the location, because this is right around the corner from where I live. So Michigan's a big state, y'all. But it's good to be able to do stuff at home, and it's good to be a Detroiter. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that I'm doing on behalf of our administration when it comes to criminal justice reform. And specifically, I am co-chairing a task force along with the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, Bridget Mary McCormack, on pretrial incarceration. Essentially, it is the deepest dive in the history of the state of Michigan into the county jail system. So when we're talking about incarceration as a movement, as a phenomenon, there has been progress, both nationally and frankly in the state of Michigan, when it comes to reducing our prison population. Over the last 10 years, we've seen a significant amount of people be able to have sentences reduced and to be able to be emancipated and come home from prison. But some of that decarceration has been a shift in incarceration. And we've seen continued increases in the amount of jail admissions as well as the length of stay in county jails across the state. So this task force, we're really looking at how we can better understand this system, its present and its reality, so we can put forward recommendations for how on a policy level we can reform it. So the task force was established via executive order in April of this year. Now, our partner, what gives us a lot of muscle is that our partner in this is the Pew Charitable Trust. Some of you may have heard of Pew. Pew is basically a national research organization. But We have really some of the most talented data analysts and policy analysts anywhere in the world. Pew is our full-throated partner with this task force. They have actually come forward in partnership with 8 staffers full-time and $1 million in support to back this research across the state of Michigan, which has 83 counties and 81 county jail systems. Now, what we're looking at is everything from how we can divert people away from coming into contact with the system in the first place, how when people are in contact with the system, how they can be treated with more dignity, humanity, and respect, and then how we can prepare people for success upon exiting county jail. So there's been a lot of research. There hasn't been a lot of data about Michigan jails, like I talked about, and one of the reasons for that, I said we have 81 county jail systems. Well, none of the information between those systems is compatible with one another, meaning like Wayne County jail data right now is incompatible with Oakland County jail data. So to do comparisons across counties is very difficult. But we have been able to observe some trends thanks to the work of Pew and the partnerships. Let me tell you a little bit more about the task force, and I'll tell you what we found. It's 21 members on the task force. It's co-chaired by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and myself. And it consists of legislators from the Michigan House and Michigan Senate, both parties. It consists of prosecutors, law enforcement, defense attorneys, formerly incarcerated people, victims' rights advocates, judges, people who run diversion programs. It's a pretty broad swath of people who have different angles and perspectives, people who administer county jails. There are sheriffs on it. So it's trying to look at things from as many angles as possible. So we've seen some of the trends in how and why jail populations grow. Wayne County is obviously the most populous county in the state, and so there are more people in Wayne County jail than any other county. We've seen trends about how and why jail populations are increasing across the state, and they're actually increasing even faster in rural counties in Michigan than they are in the urban counties. But one thing that is true across the board in urban and rural counties is that women have been the drivers of jail admissions. More women have been locked up for essentially non-violent offenses, talking about drug possession, talking about, petty larceny and shoplifting, things that and a lot of people are getting locked up, frankly, for driver's licenses. One of the things that really disturbed the Chief Justice and I in our last meeting, we have meetings every month. Our last meeting was in Grand Rapids. Our next meeting is, I think, next week here in Detroit, is that there are people, about 6% of people in Michigan who are in county jail are there because they were driving with a suspended license. But those people have been in jail not for a day, not for a week, but for a month. Like, that's ridiculous. Because I don't understand how you can, pay a jail fine without being able to drive to work. So that's a whole other conversation. We've been seeing things like that about what's driving these admissions and populations and how we can make policy changes, make sentencing guideline changes, or how we can just make executive changes or changes at the Supreme Court administrative level to end these practices and get people home and get people back to work. Because that's really what this needs to be all about, is enabling people to be their best selves and to contribute. So at the conclusion of the process, so right now this will be our 4th meeting. We had our first meeting in August of this year. So we're going around the different parts of the state and hearing public testimony from folks about their experience with the county jail system. We will conclude this process with a set of recommendations that everyone in this 21-member task force will advocate for. And some of these will be changes at the state level in terms of legislation or executive action that we can take from our office. Some of those will be changes that can happen administratively through the court system itself, because how the courts are structured in Michigan, the Supreme Court has authority over all the courts in the state. So they can set rules that other courts must follow and adhere to. And one of the reasons we wanted to have such a broad representation of people who impact the criminal justice system on this task force, so we could have input from judges, input from prosecutors, input from defense attorneys, all these players, so that we can come up with things that are robust and will actually work for people's lives. And I would say that I am actually excited, because this moment is a unique moment in the history of criminal justice reform in the country and in the state of Michigan, because there is actually bipartisan consensus that the system must change. Now, that bipartisan consensus, people are motivated by different things, right? So you might say that I might be motivated to reform the criminal justice system because it is an artifact of our racist past. But there are others who say we want to reform our criminal justice system because it's too expensive. It doesn't really matter like why they're at the table, but it does matter that people are at the table and wanting to actually see system change. And so we're trying to take advantage of that moment in this body in a way that hasn't happened at the state level in Michigan. So I think it's our responsibility, and I absolutely need all of your help to ensure that the recommendations that come forth from this process are muscular, that they have teeth, that we're advocating for things that will have an impact on people's lives. And so you can help us in this process and can see this process by going to, it's courts.mi.gov/MICJ reform. courts.michigan.gov/MICJ reform. On that site, there'll be several things. There is one, I said we've done 4 meetings. At each meeting, we have presentations from whether it's Pew or experts from around the country looking at things like cash bail and the issues with the cash bail system. Yeah. We've had things looking at the constitutional context for bail and what's problematic with it. We've had people talking about different types of diversion programs and the effectiveness of their models. We had the first round of data analysis from Pew presented at our September meeting. All the presentations that we've been given are on that website. There's video from the meetings on that website. There's also summaries of the public comment. We've had, at this point, I believe, almost 9 hours of public comment from people across the state of Michigan talking about their experiences with the county jail system. And people are talking about things like, why is it that I'm getting better mental health support in county jail than I was outside? And that support is not very good. So they're challenging us on that underinvestment. They're challenging us to actually put, pathways to success, to make them real for people. They're encouraging us to increase support for specialty courts and all these kinds of things. There are a lot of things that can happen. And so I think this is our collective opportunity to step up, to think about the system that we want to build, to not necessarily be constrained by the failings of our past system, but to instead be motivated and inspired by them to build something new that is better, that is more humane, that is more sustainable, and that actually is focused on a goal not just of rehabilitation, not just of paying a debt to society, but is focused on preparing people to be their best selves, preparing people regardless of what may have happened, what circumstance they may have been present in, what choices or mistakes they may have made, to recognize that there is still potential in every person in every community in the state of Michigan, and that throwing them away is not the way to pull it out. That's what I think this task force is about. That's what I think this criminal justice reform movement needs to be about in the state of Michigan. And I thank you for enabling me to be your lieutenant governor to work every day to make that a reality. So thank you very much. Okay. Let me get a website one more time. Again, it's courts.michigan.gov/MICJ reform, like Michigan Criminal Justice Reform, MICJ reform. And I do have time for a couple questions since we're right around the corner from my house. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to mention that meeting is Friday.
It's Friday. See, he know my calendar better than I do. It is Friday.
Friday, 9:30 at Wayne State.
There we go. Friday, 9:30 at Wayne State. There will be public testimony in the afternoon. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that there's any appetite in the state legislature for abolishing life without parole?
Yeah, I do. I think Representative Gay Dagnogo can speak to that more directly than I can, but I think there is an understanding that that's something that should be on the table. And I think, again, given this moment of unique bipartisan consensus, which is unique right now in the state of Michigan, we need to take every opportunity we can to capitalize upon that. And criminal justice is one of those realms where there is tremendous opportunity. So if we want to ask for something when it comes to the justice system, we need to ask for it. We need to advocate for it. And I'm very confident that champions like Representative Gate that no-go will be fighting for all sorts of things. I see Representative Johnson, at least I saw her a minute ago. We'll also be advocating for these kinds of reforms to our system. Yes.
So on the method, you guys are looking at policy change, and so what are some of the first policy changes you look at that's maybe on the table right now?
So, in the context of the task force, you know, one of the big ones is going to be looking at reforming the bail system in Michigan. You know, there have been other states, there have been other municipalities around the country that have taken action to remove cash bail. And that's something I think that this task force is going to end up recommending that we do or take a hard look at in Michigan. There's also the broader question of fines and fees generally. So you have this weird dynamic or this really sort of twisted incentive where the fines and the fees assessed to people who've committed offenses end up funding parts of the court system itself from an administrative perspective. And so there have been states that have worked to decouple that relationship or just end fines and fees, period, because fines and fees are just like a great way to keep poor people in jail. So that's something else that I think we'll take a look at, sort of just decoupling like money and being locked up because you don't have money. Because not having money should not be a criminal offense or something that is criminalizable.
We're going to take one more question.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, for sure.
I share the sentiment as far as the life without possibility for parole. Definitely. As a person who suffered under that penalty and get 29 years off of life without the possibility of parole. Well, I want to suggest to you that you all should probably look at everyone that's currently incarcerated, because everyone that's a lot of people who are incarcerated use a lot of times when they are released on parole, they have to go to another jurisdiction because of some type of traffic violation. They probably did 5 years, 3 years, 10 years in prison, but because they still had some misdemeanor charges, they going into another custody after doing these years in prison. So that's a waste of time and resources. And so I suggest that that you all would have district court on the inside via satellite to adjudicate every case that is currently on the inside via satellite and assign someone, like in the city of Detroit, they have the attorneys for the expungements. And so if you have attorneys assigned to be able to say, okay, let's get everybody a real clean slate, so when it's time for them to be paroled, that we're not wasting dollars and sending them to somebody county jail.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's an interesting suggestion. I appreciate that. So that I want to say just two more things in before I come out of here. So one is you brought up expungement. So just to address that specifically, so there is legislation that is moving on expungement right now. I think Representative, you were at the announcement for that like 2 Mondays ago or so, right? That we're in sort of the final negotiations about what those packages look like. One of the things that we are advocating for is the inclusion of the expungement of people's marijuana possession charges, especially in the wake of the passing of Proposal 1. That also opens the door for us to look at reforming some of the licensing requirements for people who want to get into that business that has been legitimized by the people of the state of Michigan. So that's something that is also on our radar that we want to look at. And there's some clean slate stuff that's part of that package that is also being negotiated. So just know that that's something that we care very deeply about, that I care very deeply about, and that we're going to try to make some progress on. And we want to make progress on that soon. Because unlocking that immediately increases the economic vitality of households, the viability of households, people to be able to fully participate in the economy in a way that makes sense for them. So we're really trying to unlock that potential for people in the city and all across the state. All right. Okay. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Again, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for being here, you and your team. So thank you all. Excuse me. So I know I said we had to kind of do a little detour, but it all works out the right way because this is coming together the way I wanted this conversation. But I don't really know who y'all are today because usually you all are a bit more rambunctious than this. I don't know if y'all sleepy or what, but I'm used to you all being a little bit more lively. So we talked about Project Clean Slate and what we have going as far as the city right now. And is it the end-all, be-all? Absolutely not. But is it a start? Heck yeah. Because it's completely different than what we had before, because what we had before was nothing, right? And so what do we need to make it have more teeth? Well, that is exactly what Representative Gay Dagnogo is going to tell us about and how this all ties together. So thank you for welcoming her.
That applause should be to the council member for helping us get the word out. So thank you for inviting me to participate, and thank you for having this. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Indigenous People Day. That's right. Come on, give yourselves a round of applause. Melting pot. We were here, many of us were here before the Nina the Santa and the Pinta Maria, Santa Maria. Nina the Pinta and the Santa Maria. I am Sherry Gay Dagnogo, State Representative of the 8th House District in my 3rd and final term. I am also the Detroit Caucus Chair, and I'm so glad to see 2 of my caucus members here, Representative Cynthia A. Johnson and Senator Bullock. So the governor the Lieutenant Governor did a phenomenal job talking about the work that the task force is doing. And I am proud that also one of our caucus members is serving on that task force. So Representative Tanisha Yancey, who is an attorney and former assistant prosecutor, also serves on that task force. And I think it's a big deal. So knowing that serving in my 3rd term, a lot of the work that we do in the process of getting legislation done, just know that we put in bills a lot of times that do a lot of things, but they actually get no hearing. This has been a vision and a goal of mine, being a product of having a dad who was incarcerated, as someone who was raised in church, Greater Grace Temple, for about 30 plus years, attending and being a vigilant member of the prison ministry, going to Huron Valley, having service, et cetera, and understanding the impact, but also being a former teacher, but always an educator, having many of my students who had parents that were incarcerated and knowing the impact that it has on them. The one thing that the LG lifted up was understanding the why. Well, not necessarily understanding the why, but realizing that there are different whys. Some of us come to this work because of different whys. Project Clean Slate and the work that they're doing has a why. But members on the other side of the aisle, they have a why, whether it's the economics, the fact that it's impacting our state's bottom line, our budget. We spend more than $35,000 a year on one prisoner and less than $8,000 a year on a student. I've been saying that before I was elected. So it's about time somebody figure out that this is costing us too much money. Everybody's not going to have the same level of empathy that we might have for this work, and some people may not embrace that. And so the reason I lift that up is for those of you who don't happen to live in a Democratic district, so that you're not going to your representative's coffee hour saying this is the right thing to do. They really could care less if it's the right thing to do. But if you understand their why, whether it's the economics or whatever their rationale is, that's the best way to advocate. And so it's important that we understand that when we're going to lobby on behalf of this legislation. I'm proud that the Detroit Caucus members have also been meeting with, or a couple of her meetings, County Prosecutor Kim Worthy, convening legislative roundtable discussions on how to advance other policy agenda so that we truly reform our criminal justice system and understanding all the barriers that the prosecutors have, the judges have. How many of you know that the city of Detroit have the largest dockets in the country? So a number of the challenges we face with that bottleneck, the impact that the prosecutors have, the impact of overburdened dockets in the court systems, then we find ourselves in a conundrum of, so where do we put people? And I don't even want to have a conversation on jails being built or not built or whatever. That's a whole nother sidebar. So yes, we've all focused on issues as it relates to no cash bond, making it a fair way for members of people who have found themselves in a bad place in jail, but don't have the opportunity because of finances to not get out of jail on a bond. Women who are having childbirth while in handcuffs, it's completely unacceptable. I'm a part of the Progressive Women Caucus, and Representative Christy Pagan out of Wayne County as the chair of that committee. And so that is something that even we talked about this past Friday, Thursday or Friday, in Representative Yancey's district. And that coupled with a number of other issues that disproportionately impact urban communities and women. And so we need to understand that. Alternative sentencing guidelines is another priority issue. People that find themselves impacted by mental health issues. As the weather starts changing, you'll find that some of our homeless population, may do things, may break a window. I'm on 6 Mile, Chelsea, a number of our businesses suffered unnecessarily, breaking all the windows. What does a person get out of that? But you'll be surprised that some people are crying out because they don't have affordable housing. They don't have anywhere to live. And so a bed and a cot and what do they call it? A cot and two hots and a cot. That's a real thing. People are looking for meals and somewhere to stay. And so working with organizations like Team Wellness that's located down in Eastern Market and other organizations to possibly look at ways that they can work with our county jails to address the mental health aspect and then all of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If a person doesn't have shelter, if they don't have anything to eat, if they're dealing with depression and other issues, then certainly they're perhaps maybe breaking the law, but breaking the law for the purpose of crying out for help. And we have to do a better job at that. And so properly funding our mental health system is a part of that. But I'm proud to be a part of a very audacious goal, which I don't like reading things to people. Thank you to Team Ayers that helped pass these out. A package of bills, a bipartisan package of 5 bills. No, it's not everything. But as the sister from Clean Slate pointed out, right now in our state, you can only have 1 felony expunged. What good does that do if you have a person that had breaking and entering, uttering and publishing, and you name it? I mean, they just did it all in one bad night. And throughout that one transaction, a person can have several felonies from that one transaction. And so I'm very proud. This is not the first time I sponsored this bill. It just goes to show you how the legislature works. You have to be persistent in bringing your legislation back and waiting for that window of opportunity. And so this term, we have actually an opportunity with our Criminal Justice Caucus, which is headed by Representative Graham Filler, who is a Republican, a great guy, and also Representative David LeGrand. The Attorney General has sat during the caucus meetings and attended and talked about ways that we can address this. Many prosecutors from around the state, the Prosecutors Association of Michigan have sat at that table. Law enforcement has sat at that table, trying to find common ground, because that's what happens. Oftentimes, if you put a bill forward to have it address some challenge or flaw or injustice in the system, if you don't have everybody at the table helping to draft the legislation and to get around whatever barriers there may be from one perspective or another, then the bill doesn't get passed because different interests will start lobbying against the legislation and make it more challenging. This time, I'm very proud that we have everyone on board to move these 5 bills. And this is exciting because, again, my bill is just one of them, but I'm very proud that you could have a person that made a poor decision that gained or got 3 felonies or 3 misdemeanors or whatever it is, and now when this legislation passed, they will be eligible to have all of those misdemeanors and felonies expunged. Traffic offenses, which were not able to be addressed before, will now be able to be addressed by Rep. Wenzel's bill, and you see it on here. So I'll just go through. Rep. LeGrand will expand the number of people that will qualify for expungement if a person has 3 felonies, and having them set aside even for an assaultive crime. Some of those things can be addressed, and again, it gives the discretion to the people that we elected to adjudicate cases to begin with. And I think that, for me, that has always been my lens, is to give judges, we should have checks and balances. If we have judges in place to adjudicate cases, they studied the law, they know case history, etc., we should entrust them to be able to make the decisions for sentencing guidelines, as well as when a person is eligible for those expungement. And so this is opening the window a bit. Is not as progressive as a number of other states. I know the work that Chicago is doing, Philadelphia is doing, and a few more states. They're a little bit more progressive than we are, but I think this is a beacon of light for where we have been. And so marijuana, I mean, go figure. Now that we have legalized recreational and medicinal in the state, now this legislation will go back and address those who would fall under what the current statute allows for, to be able to provide expungement as well. And so Rep. Robbie's bill would address or shorten the eligible period for misdemeanor expungements from 5 years to 3 years. So, I mean, I have an example on the other side. Now, I'm a science teacher. I'm not an attorney. See, 2 science teachers up here. I'm not an attorney, but I've learned a lot more about our criminal justice system. But more than that, having a passion to realize when you have a personal experience, some of you may have family members or friends or someone who's encountered the criminal justice system. Being, again, as I highlighted earlier, a daughter of my dad was incarcerated, but also being a member of Greater Grace Temple's prison ministry for years. I don't get a chance to go now as much as I'd like, or at all for that matter, because I'm too busy running back and forth to Lansing and everywhere else. But I enjoyed my days of going to Huron Valley and ministering to women who, by the grace of God, there go I, and many of us for that matter, one wrong decision could take away your freedom forever. And so should people pay the rest of their lives, even after they've given and served their time? That's a justice question for me. But then if you come from the other side of the aisle, perhaps should we as taxpayers pay for them the rest of their lives? Whatever the message is or whatever the why is, it doesn't matter. I'm glad that we have an apex now where both sides of the aisle meet on common ground to advance this change. And so we've had 2 hearings, and I think there'll be 1 more. And we're looking to move these rather quickly. Rep. Granfiller is looking to have these done before we leave for Thanksgiving. And so if you all could get your email going and encourage everybody on the committee that will be hearing these to vote them out, and ask everybody when they come to the floor, or then the next step is email the speaker and ask him to bring it to the floor. And then once it comes to the floor, ask all 110 members to vote in the affirmative so that we can realize change and then have some real good expungement clinics starting January 2020. So I think that's it. If you have any questions. I did my job.
You did.
Daryl, a teacher judges how effective they are with how many faces look like they got it. No, but I know you are in this work and you're vigilant in this work. So sure, I'll take a question.
I just got a brief question.
Okay.
What day is the next hearing?
I live by my phone, which is live right now. So I don't know the exact date. It may be tomorrow. I need to look. And I'll make sure that I get that information.
So, representative will share the information with us. We'll
Yes.
make sure everyone in this
Good.
room understands when that next hearing is so that you can engage, because it's a very important issue, and we need everyone's attention. All hands on deck.
Yeah, just if you don't mind sharing share this flyer with everyone. Because what was alarming to me, Judge Deborah Thomas has been doing expungements before we even knew how to spell expungement.
That's true.
And she does this, has been doing it for years for free. But it was National Expungement Month last month, and we did a couple of events together. What was alarming to me, that less than 10% of the people that qualify actually even went through the process to get their one felony expunged. We got to make sure that we have all hands on deck, because the reason for my why also is we get people to work. We got all this construction going on. We have all these jobs. And unless we can get rid of felonies on folks' records, they can't, benefit from the great renaissance. So it's incumbent upon all of us to share this information, give it to your organizations, whatever it is, invite us to send you information, our churches, our community groups, etc. No returning citizen that qualifies should be left without an expungement in the city of Detroit. And I think we should all make that our collective goal as we move forward and this legislation passes. Right? Well, thank you again. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you again. Sherry's actually my state rep, so. And it's funny how much you don't know until you start to talk, because I knew she was a science teacher. I was a science teacher. I didn't know your dad was incarcerated. My dad was incarcerated.
See?
Go figure, right? So,
Twins.
right. Conversations that you just have with folks and you just don't know. I do want to go to something Justin did mention. He said it out loud, but I want to make sure that it's on the microphone so that it's also, when this is played back, people will understand. And Felicia, we'll get with you too so we can post the information. But when we get the information on when the next hearing is or who we need to email, we will blast that out to everybody. And y'all send it to your networks too, because at the end of the day, none of this stuff has a color. None of this stuff has a socioeconomic barrier. And quite honestly, we know that the needle is moving because a lot of people that don't look like a lot of us in this room are now being affected by it. And so whatever the impetus is, we need to make sure we continue to push it and push it and push it until we see some results that we know will be tangible and have an impact on the communities that we represent. So I just had to get that in there, especially when we say, Project Clean Slate, they're doing good work, but we shouldn't just be at 400 plus expungements, not when we have 82,000 that are ineligible. So can you imagine what that workforce looks like if we are able to get folks over here? You bring me stuff like I can read it while I'm talking. Okay, I got that part. All right. I'm talented, but I don't know if I'm that talented, Justin. So we're going to go right into, how many of you guys remember the last time we were talking about the piece of legislation that we worked on, which was the Fair Chance Ordinance? You guys remember that as far as the fair housing? All right, so we do have, Paige is here to kind of give us an update on where we are with that. And then, Paige, you need to come on up. You all welcome, Paige.
Welcome, Paige.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my director sent me here. She didn't tell me I had to come up behind Councilwoman Ayers, the Lieutenant Governor. She was just like, hey, and state representative. She was just like, hey, can you go to this event real fast? I'm like, sure, when you want me to go? She's like, can you head there now? So yeah, lower your expectations. I'm just kidding. I have a lot of information to give out. But this fair chance ordinance is something I greatly appreciate. This is a large part of why I took my job when I started at CREO, which is the Civil Rights Inclusion Opportunity Department. Charity, my director, Charity Dean, was letting me know that helping with outreach and enforcement for this ordinance will be a major part of my job, and it was something that prison reform holds a big place in my heart because I have family members that have dealt with that are still dealing with that. I see it every day. I've studied statistics while, trying to research what's the best methods for this outreach. And Detroit is 85% black. Out of that 85%, about 33%, if I'm not mistaken, are incarcerated. Like, that's huge. So I think trying to find something to help these people when they come home, it makes a huge difference. Something else I wanted to talk about, too, is this also has a big effect on income. So families that are returning, or parents that return home from incarceration, their income decreases by 15%. So that means that children in Detroit aren't getting what they need as far as resources. It's just like a systematic cycle. It keeps going and going. So we're trying to do our part on the housing end, too. I bought some literature here. I'll pass out once I get up. Oh, I have more over there. Yep. I'll pass off to you all. So what CREO's plan with this, I don't know how much you discussed this before, but what CREO plans to do is if your landlord isn't abiding by the guidelines of the Fair Chance Ordinance, you as the returning citizen, you have the opportunity to file a complaint with my office. The complaint form is online, and what CREO would do is investigate the situation. And in that, we can't still guarantee you housing, but the next phase of outreach, or something I'm working on, is putting together housing packet resources. So I want to be able to have a list of landlords or housing management companies that you can go to and not be discriminated against with housing. And this is what this form looks like. I think his name is Justin. He's passing these out. This kind of gives a...
You over here hot? You nervous?
You said I am nervous.
Okay. Don't be nervous.
This gives a step-by-step process of what it looks like. So one is the applicant requests the application. Landlord doesn't supposed to ask about your criminal history. The landlord reviews the application. Landlord determines the eligibility and provides the tenant conditional lease agreement. That's, if he approves it. The landlord reviews the criminal history. If the application is rejected because of criminal past, landlord must allow the applicant to provide rehabilitation evidence. The evidence of rehabilitation is provided. If the landlord accepts the evidence, the tenant then moves in. And then if the landlord denies the application, the applicant has the option to file a complaint with the City of Detroit Civil Rights Inclusion Opportunity Department. The investigation, we're hoping to have a pretty fast turnaround time. Like 48 hours is the turnaround time for that. And that is... So it is rolling out. Well, we actually have already kind of started our outreach on it. The official date started in August. Yep, it started in August. So the first year, no landlord should be penalized this year, but next year around August, that is when we're going to start heavy enforcement on that portion of it. And any questions? So they could face misdemeanor charges if found guilty.
We had landlords that wanted to be a part of the project.
I'll give you my card after this. Anyone else? That's it. You have anything else you want? Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Let's take
See, Paige, that wasn't that bad. We didn't lower our expectations. We didn't do any of that. But I do want to just go back a little bit. So you all know how supremely important having access to housing is. I mean, that's just important for any of us to begin with, so let alone if you have a barrier. And so we pushed hard to make sure that this ordinance would come to fruition, number one. And number two, to make sure that CREO was staffed to the capacity that they need in order to make this work. Because the teeth are there. Angie, who's here from the Free Press, she covers returning citizens. That's her beat, and I appreciate her. she asked me a question earlier that she received from a landlord that said, well, don't you think that's counterproductive if you're going to give us the misdemeanor if we don't allow them to rent from us? And like I said to Angie, I appreciate that question. I understand the sentiment. But if, in fact, we allow things to carry on with no teeth the way they are now, we're going to be in the same spot. So we have to do whatever it takes to push the envelope, and hopefully people will just not be discriminatory. So, but we know that that's not always the case. That's how we ended up here with the ordinance that we need to enforce. And then we also talked a little bit about just as a woman, like I see this from a different perspective, because there aren't women halfway houses. So if I'm a woman that's coming home from being incarcerated, where do I go? If I don't have my children, where do I go? So my options become limited, and so now what? I won't say what I was about to say, but because my aunt gave me a saying a long time ago that every woman has a gold mine, right? And you don't want necessarily for folks to have to go back to that or reduce themselves to that or be dependent on any man or woman or whomever in order to make do and find somewhere to live, just because the options aren't there. So again, while I appreciate where the landlords are coming from, that's why we took so long to roll this out, because we wanted to have that opportunity for those that are registered landlords throughout the city based on the other ordinance, for us to reach out to them so that they know what their rights are, so that they understand what the ordinance looks like, and so we can be efficient and effective. Because I don't know about y'all, but I don't have time to waste. And so if it's not going to be efficient and effective, then I don't need any parts of it. All right, so we're going to get ready to wrap shortly, y'all. I told you I have a commitment to you. I will not keep you all night. So I guess that was part of my,
Anybody want to share what they have going on?
Well, let me share what I have going on. How about that? You all, I don't talk about that, Justin. Y'all remember Justin? Justin's back, you guys. So I'm excited to have Justin back. Justin is, I've said it to you all before, Justin is phenomenal, and I'm just very pleased to have him back. He started this task force with me. He knows you all. You all have had an opportunity to get to learn and grow with Jalen and Jordan and Rick, but it's a whole team effort. It's all of us. But so my update was, this guy's back. 2 J's is back. So if you see a random email, don't be afraid to respond to it. It's not spam. It really is Justin. Really is. I do want to take a point of personal privilege, though. Chelsea, could you come up? I want you to talk about what your role is in your department, because I'm going to tell y'all, poor Chelsea caught it from me the other day. I thought that she was a part of this department, right, with the city, and I'm like, so wait a minute. You've been doing this, and my task force, we could have been used this. What do you mean? How are you going to be late? And she's like, it's only been a week. I was like, oh, my bad. So I'm publicly apologizing to Chelsea for overreacting. So I was like, how do we have all these resources, and you're just now coming to see me? What kind of trash is this? So I just want you all to hear what it is that Chelsea does.
I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Council Member. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chelsea Neblett. I work in the Department of Neighborhoods in the Mayor's office, and we recently, within the last month, just over a month now, launched a financial empowerment center. So we are very excited for this initiative. It's free one-on-one financial counseling as a public service to residents of the city of Detroit and Wayne County. And one of the things we're most excited about is we are going to have an integration with returning citizens. So we know individuals who are justice involved, a lot of times when they're returning, face different financial barriers, identity theft. They have high levels sometimes of child support that need to have modifications for. So there's a whole slew second chance bank accounts, right? It's hard to get back into banking or recoup finances that were in bank accounts that were shut down during incarceration. So there's a whole host of services that we are going to be able to provide specifically to returning citizens, in addition to any resident who wants to receive financial empowerment and financial counseling services. So I wasn't prepared to speak, so I don't have any flyers with me, but if you go to DetroitFEC.org, .org, so that's Detroit FEC, as in Financial Empowerment Center, .org. There's all the information about how to obtain those services, including the call center number, which is open Monday through Friday from 9 to 4:30. So just really quick, what it is, it's an hour to an hour and a half session. It's one-on-one professionally trained counselors, and we counsel on banking access, credit repair, debt reductions, and increased savings, and all of the topics that fall underneath there. So please, if you know anyone who can access or would benefit from those services, please have them call. All right, thank you so much.
So you see all the stuff that she's able to do, you see why I was fussing. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? So now that we know that this exists, I'm gonna put it on the record. This is gonna be shown again on Channel 10. I'm going to be advocating for money in the budget to go to actually empower that. So I'm going to be fighting for that, because we have too many people, not just returning citizens, but folks that need that type of empowerment. A lot of us from the communities we come from, we don't get that financial conversation. We don't get that, like, don't open that credit card, Janeé, because, you know, I know they said they give you an inflatable chair for your dorm. And I was like, this chair is for free? Okay. And then, yeah, so that was, y'all, I don't know, where are my regular folks at? Where are they at? Because y'all are asleep. This is a new crew. Jeez. I'm not a comedian, but I'm kind of funny. But, all right. So any good and welfare, anybody have anything that you want to update us on that anyone is doing?
Of course, everybody in this room should know by now that Flip the Script was reinstated their funding from the state level. And I'm not sure if you heard from our executive team or anyone that Flip the Script, but you are now. I want to tell you thank you. I spoke with Rev Johnson and Sherry before they left, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for what you do. I saw somebody else's hand. If y'all just stand up if you have one, so that Jalen will know where to go. Because y'all can chill with the church family.
Thank the councilwoman in this group as well. I presented a while back that we were opening a housing facility, and we ran into some problems, but we finally got it open in May. So Team Wellness Center has always served and worked with returning citizens, but one of the barriers has been that if they don't have a place to stay, they're not showing up for therapy or substance use appointments. And so we were able to open an 85-bed unit over on East Jefferson, where we're housing individuals. And since May, we've had 50 individuals complete that program, and they've now graduated on to employment and living independently. And they're still with us as far as getting their mental health and substance use treatment, but they're now truly, instead of being looked at or looked upon as a debt to society, they're now contributing to society as working, tax-paying individuals. So thank you. And I do have brochures about our program at the table. I've got some here, so if you have any questions, please see me after the meeting.
Great, thank you.
How's everybody doing? My name is Ryan Mack. I'm working with the AARP Foundation. And the AARP Foundation has essentially launched a virtual financial education program here in the city of Detroit as a pilot. We're basically going to see about going and taking it nationally, but we want to start here in the city of Detroit. There's 3 ways that you can go about using it. The first way is it's called the mysavingsjar.org platform. So if you go to mysavingsjar.org, you can go online, check it out. It's free of charge. The second way is, so if you can use that platform, the second way is to just email. So if you have any questions, email me at michigan@mysavingsjar.org. Any financial education question, whether it be how to repair your credit, whether it be how to budget, how to start a business, how to buy a house, then I'll personally be answering those questions. We have other financial experts that once we get over to capacity, we'll be answering questions. And the third way is, we'd love to come out to your organization to actually do some workshops on site for you, to do some face-to-face, one-on-one engagement. Again, everything's free of charge. I'll vouch for FEC as well. They do some good work. So we're also, if you have any organizations in here that we'd love to add to our network, that we'd love to continue to refer to. We don't do any one-on-one direct counseling, so if you do one-on-one direct counseling services, we want to be able to refer those individuals. When they email us, we can then refer those folks out. So we'd love to pass some information out and work with everybody here. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan.
Hi, my name is Willie Bell with the Farm Program Family Assistance for Renaissance Men. So once again, well, let me say it this way. We actually do work on the other end of the expungement side. we try to work with fathers before they get incarcerated. Give fathers a second chance to get it right. Statistics tell us that, you know, a lot of the things that we find ourselves in this country, when it comes to men going to jail, the lack of education, lack of, you know, even co-parenting skills, comes from the fact that we just don't get it right the first time. So when a man, you know, finds himself not home and then he gets imprisoned because of the non-support case, the felony non-support case that's placed on him from the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan said behind $2,500 or 4 years here in the state of Michigan in child support arrears, then it progresses to a felony non-support case. So that represents thousands of men out here who are running because they have these felonies over their heads, and you know, it starts with the education part of it. So what we do is we mentor these men. We mentor them. We actually have a partnership with Wayne State University School of Social Work. So we actually reteach them and train them to get it right, give them the second chance to get it right with their children, as well as getting right with the mothers of their children. We have a workforce development program within our programming, which teaches them a introductory skill, if you will. So we partner with the Detroit Land Bank. We take the vacant land bank houses, starting with the first one last year, and we refurbish them, teaching them men a skill such as plumbing, electrical, drywall, paint, carpentry, the whole 9 yards. We also pay them a stipend. Half of that stipend goes toward their tickets, their warrants, their driver's license, their child support, which gives us 100% child support payments made through our program on behalf of these guys when they're helping to refurbish our communities. So it's complete wraparound services. We partner with the Detroit Justice Center. So we have 10 lawyers in our program helping us help these guys with their various issues. So there's a bunch of stuff that we do in this program, similar to some of the stuff that Flip the Script is doing, but we target the fathers. And we take the fathers with our partnership with Detroit Pistons, Tigers, Lions, and take the games with their children. We had 40 seats at the Tigers game. Of course, the Tigers aren't doing so well this year. But, you know, but we had 40 seats where we took the fathers and their children to the games where they had an opportunity to spend time with their children, which they've never had. Some of them never had a chance at all. So thank you for your time. We'll leave that with Family Assistance for Renaissance Men. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Again, Malia Salam with Detroit Word. Just want to remind or let everyone know that we have a couple of retail hospitality targeted hiring events and job fairs. The first is taking place tomorrow morning at Samaritan Center from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Samaritan Center, 5555 Connor. There are flyers on your way out the door. And then the next bigger hiring job fair for retail hospitality will be at Northwest Activity Center in the ballroom next Wednesday the 23rd from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you have participants, clientele, other partners that you can inform of this, that would be great. The information is also under the news section on the Detroit website. Thank you.
Malia, are they open to hiring regardless of a person's criminal record?
So we have over a dozen different employers, and each one has its own policy. Some of the participating employers are Greektown Casino and Hotel, Weston. There are a few restaurants from the Illinois Restaurant Association, Hertz Rent-A-Car, Avis Rent-A-Car, a number of retailers. So it really just depends on their individual policy and what the specific offense is and what the actual position is.
Can you make sure that we get a list, I get a list of the employers that you have attending for both of those, because some of them I need to have a conversation with. Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't think off the top of my head.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you.
That sounds like a scary conversation.
No. Progressive, productive conversation.
Again, I'm Stacey Alavashi with the City of Detroit Human Resources Department, and I don't have an update, but I have an ask of organizations, and when Team Wellness was speaking, made me think about it. So today I received a telephone call from an employee, a returning citizen that needs to go into some form of treatment program. And the battle that he's having is if he goes into this treatment program, then he will lose his job. And so I understand, and I've asked different different organizations. So I hire a lot of returning citizens for the city, and that's just my strategic approach based on one of the mayor's initiative to the Border Brigade program. The city of Detroit is an equal opportunity employer. I do want to say that. I feel like I need to say that. But I just take a strategic approach with partnering with Law Reentry, with Cherry Health, with the Greening of Detroit to hire those individuals that they serve. And so this one gentleman, he didn't come from there, but he had served quite a number of years. And he's at this, I guess, fork in the road of what to do. And so my ask is, if you offer programs to returning citizens, that if you could think about evening programs and or weekends. I don't know if you offer that already. I understand the constraint it can have on budget because you're working individuals longer and all of that. But it is what it is. And when individuals have to decide between seeking the help that they need versus employment and chancing, I don't know if I can come back to the city because I don't know if they would rehire me, or I don't know if I can go to someplace else. And although we have all these organizations that hire returning citizens, will my charge fit their background? So just something to think about, and that's just my ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
So my name's Eladio Nino, and I'm a returning citizen. I've been home for 5 months. I've served a 17-year sentence. Since I've been home, I landed a job at the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation as a youth and young adult mentor. It's something that I'm very proud of, something that I've always been passionate with. While I was on the inside, I studied curriculum, and I facilitated lots of self-help programming and life skill programming inside the prison, as well as a youth program. So I'm also a college student at the Wayne County Community College, and it's something that I'm very proud of because I never see myself in that light. You know, I grew up in the Southwest Detroit, River Rouge, E-Course area as well. And my life has been a journey, so being here and hearing about everything that's available to reentry, people like me, everything that I'm going through today has been a challenge for me because I went through one of the biggest transitions in my life, and that was the battle between flesh and spirit, the battle between me and myself. And I came out on top, you know. I sought out God. God guided me, gave me everything that I needed to get to where I'm at today. But I realized that the fight is not over. And I'm realizing that there's a lot of resources here that I could use. Even though I do have a job, it seems like as soon as I got a job, all the resources went away. Like, okay, well, you're working now, so you don't need a food stamp card. You don't need any financial aid assistance. You don't need Medicaid anymore. And I do. You know, I've only been home 5 months, and it took me a couple months to get my Social Security card. I went through a lot of obstacles doing that. I still struggle financially, daily. I'm struggling with technology. They give me homework in school. I'm behind in my assignments because I don't fully comprehend it as well. When you're struggling financially, that's another stress on me. I have a 23-year-old daughter that's struggling with addiction. So trying to stay mentally healthy, integrate myself back into society, maintain a job that helps people, and then can't find anybody to help me, So I've been doing a lot of praying, and I'm grateful that I'm here today to share myself, my story, with everyone here so that they can see it from the realest aspect. I need some support. I need to know where there's resources that can help me get ahead. I'm determined to be successful. Maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a mental meltdown. I felt overwhelmed by life standards, expectations, just paying bills, getting into all that, and I just, I did a lot of praying. I bucked back, and I got back to it. But the reality of things is that, I don't have enough money to survive right now. I do need help. I have a car that breaks down on me every 2 weeks, so every time I do get a check, I'm putting it in the car, and I need help, and I need to know where I can find it if it's available.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you. I do want you to know that this ain't even everybody that's attached to this task force. And so I know some of you all probably have some information that you can share with this young man before we leave out of here today. But we'll make sure to get your information as well too, and you with some other folks that we know can assist. But just hold on. When you get to the end of the road, just hold on. It's more road. It's just you just gotta reach for it, and you did that. And so just know that I appreciate what you're trying to do. I appreciate the person that you are and the person that you are going to be. And so don't say that you think you're going to make it. You are going to make it. I know you're going to make it. And if that means I throw up some pressure for you, guess what? You'll do that together. This is a group of people, and we're all here not by chance. It's not by chance that all of us are in the same place at the same time. So if you all ever get overwhelmed with your work, understand that you're doing the right thing. This is a product of the work that you're doing. So we have more work to do, but thank you.
With that being said, the gentleman, his name is Derek Jordan, he's going to head the program. Okay. With that being said also, did you guys know Michigan ranks #3 in the country at aerospace manufacturing? I've been in this business now for over 30 years. And right now what we're looking for is quality control and non-destructive testing. Basically, those jobs are on the north side of the 8 Mile Road. But another thing here in the city of Detroit, Detroit is right there on 8 Mile and Hoover. That company is in Detroit. It got the Supplier of the Year award from NASA. And this was recorded in the Detroit Free Press. And I'm glad she's right here from the Detroit Free Press. With that being said, in this industry right now in the state of Michigan, what we need is over 300 non-destructive testing employees and also CNC operators. So what they've done, what we've done so far, if you can read a tape measure and do basic math, this is what they're looking for right now. This is at Moeller Aerospace and this is at Lock Performance. They just received a $470 million defense contract. So the opportunities are here in Michigan.
So do you all hire regardless of folks' backgrounds, or?
This is one reason why I'm here for that today. I'm also a member of the Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Association. This is what we're looking for. If you can get out there, we all remember the walking man when he lived in Detroit and he had to walk wherever the bus stop was at. He had to walk. This is what we're looking for also. The entry level for that, as far as the fee, and it says right here they would train start at $15 to $20 an hour.
So sounds like.
But you had to get out to Wixom and Shelby Township and Utica because that's where they're at.
Okay, but I mean, hey, get us information. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Don Martin. With the welding, that was my nonprofit training center, Welding Concepts Training. I have a mobile training units in Southwest Detroit that I've been training some people out of. I've been sort of working with Detroit Training Center. They're doing the workforce development and some of the other paperwork, and I've been doing the technical skills training. And I want to thank these trade unions because they are felon friendly, and a number of our students that have come through the program have went over to Sheet Metal Local 292, and they passed the welding test. Some of them are on the list to start. A gentleman stopped by earlier today just to thank me for the training that he received. Halfway through the program, he got a job at one place through temp service, and then he ended up, I sent him over to take the test at Local 292. He passed the test, got on the list. He stopped by today and said that tomorrow he gets his first paycheck. He's working 10 hours a day, 8 hours on Saturday and Sunday. He expects his first paycheck to be $1,000. And he went from almost homeless, not knowing where his next meal's coming from, to coming through this program and learning enough skills in 160 hours with the welding qualification testing that employers are looking for, and starting on these jobs. And a few of the other returning citizens that were in the program that I sent over there, they passed the test, and they were just waiting on an employer to pick them up. And one of the employers here in Detroit, it's Gallagher Kaiser, was looking for 100 welders that could come in and pass the test to go to work. The pay for that is just under $20 an hour, with about a close to $20 an hour benefit package. So just want to give that update. Thank you.
We will get the date to you, because that is what's going to happen next. Is going to be an actual resource fair. So you all bring all your information to that space. You all participated before, but Justin will be in contact with you for the next date. Dion.
Councilwoman Ayers, thank you for the invitation for coming out. Dion Williams with Governor Whitmer's office and the LG. I know he was here speaking earlier. I'm not for certain if he made a couple of announcements of some of the things that the governor has done when it comes to criminal justice and the reform pieces. I'm just going to read off a couple of bullet points here. Executive Order 10 forms the Michigan Taskforce on Jails and Pretrial Incarceration, which kickstarts a bipartisan review of state jails, courts, and data, expanding the alternatives to jail, safely reducing jail administration and the length of stays, and improve the effectiveness on the front end of the Michigan judicial system. And she also did an announcement for interdepartmental partnership that helps develop individuals incarceration to rejoin the workforce. And so what they're able to do while they're in jail to give them a second chance is they can get their professional licenses while they're actually in jail. We're talking about barbers, beauty salons.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is very huge, very huge. And even also the skilled trades pieces. And then also she signed House Bill 4129 through 4132, allowing the Michigan Department of Corrections to parolee seriously ill and medical frail prisoners so they can obtain care for their medical facilities or nursing homes instead of prison facilities, saving the state taxpayer dollars. So if they're medically or mentally ill, and I mean it's of serious nature, they can do that on the outside instead of being on the inside of the prisons and costing taxpayers dollars.
Did you all know that? Was that it?
Yeah.
You know you do the same. That's huge.
Right. And then the last one is she signed Senate Bill number 2 and then House Bill 4001 and 4002 to limit civic access forfeitures for those who have not been convicted of a crime in order to increase property protection for the citizens.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us those updates. So like I said, next order of business, Justin or Jalen, one of the J's, we're going to reach out to you with the next date for our resource fair. So that'll give you all an opportunity to get all your ducks in a row, and let's help some more folks. But I appreciate you. You know I love you all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for being here. And if you have more information to share with this young man, please reach out and touch him. Thank you.